It is official, and Jey Uso will go one-on-one with the ring general, Gunther, for the World Heavyweight Championship in the main event at Wrestlemania 41 in Las Vegas. Has the Queen, Charlotte Flair, made her decision on who she wants to fight at WrestleMania 41? All this, plus what does NXT have in store at Vengeance Day this Saturday? Welcome to another exciting edition of WWE Week on Sports for Beginners. Welcome to Sports for Beginners. This is the show where I cover the Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Blue Jays, and take you on a journey through the world of sports from the fans' perspective. Here is your host, Scott McGregor. Let's have some fun. Jey Uso makes his decision. He will go one-on-one with Gunther, the ring general, at, yes, I said at, the one, the only, WrestleMania 41. My name is Scott McGregor. Welcome to another episode of Sports for Beginners, season number 4. It's episode 3 of season 4 of the podcast. Jey Uso versus Gunther at WrestleMania 41. We're going to be joined in a little bit by our good buddy over at On the Ice and Behind the Benches, Thomas McGregor, to talk about this in just a little bit. But as you know, on WWE Week, I am your host, Scott McGregor. I would let you guys know where you can follow me on my socials, but for those who are aware, we also would like to welcome listeners from around the world, including those listening to Sienna T Radio, making your day brighter one song at a time, as it always is. And that's again Sienna T Radio, making your day brighter one song at a time. With that said, I also invite fans to check out Penguins postgame on both On the Ice and Behind the Benches and Sports for Beginners. But we'll talk about Penguins postgame down the road. With that said, as we said in the last episode on season 4's second episode of the show, WWE Week will run like this. We'll go over headlines and the match card from Monday Night Raw, from the previous Monday Night Raw. We'll then head over to our headlines from NXT and follow it up with last call, getting ready for Friday Night SmackDown. At the time of our recording, we are getting you ready for February 15th, 14th to be exact, I should say. For Friday Night SmackDown, we're just for a few matchups that we already know of. We will see Triple Threat as Damian Priest takes on the Samoan Werewolf, Jacob Fatu, and the Monster Among Men, Braun Strowman. Winner headlines the Elimination Chamber. On the women's side, Chelsea Green will go one-on-one with Naomi. And speaking of the Queen herself, who has yet to make a decision. Speaking of the Queen herself, Charlotte Flair, we want to know, when is she going to make her decision? Well, her decision on the SmackDown side of things got a whole lot more interesting as tonight, even though this is on a Thursday recording, and the matches are on Friday. The show will drop on Friday. So that's why I said tonight, if you're catching it on a Friday, Nia Jax will go against Tiffany Stratton, to try to take back the title she believes was stolen from her. And we welcome in Thomas to the show here. So let me actually start with that as we welcome him into WWE Week on Sports for Beginners. So Thomas, before we get into the headlines, and there's a lot that I want to ask you on that front, I want to know from you, I'd like to know from you, when do you think Charlotte will make her decision? When do you think Charlotte Flair will make her decision? And who do you think she's possibly going to take on? Just a reminder, we have a championship match on Friday Night SmackDown between Nia Jax and Tiffany Stratton. And Charlotte's got Rhea Ripley on the red brand, but she also has Julia. Of course, that could either be Bayley, or that could be Cora Jade, or it could also be Roxanne Perez if Julia is defeated at Vengeance Day on Saturday. So, what are your thoughts on Charlotte's decision? When do we think she is going to make her decision? And we'll talk about Jey Uso and Gunther in a little bit.
Well, yeah, so when we look at it from Charlotte Flair's notion, I'm more than likely ready to see if Charlotte is going to make a decision either next NXT, and of course I'm referring to after Vengeance Day. I'm looking to see if she'll make her decision on the next Vengeance Day, which of course will be WWE NXT, which is Saturday. I want to see if she makes her decision after Vengeance Day in NXT. And if that is indeed the case, I'd actually like to see what she's going to probably try to do if it's not going to be NXT. Is she going after Nia Jax or Tiffany Stratton? Since last Friday night, when it was determined that there was a match between Nia Jax, the Irresistible Force, and of course, it was also noted that we would be hearing from not just the Irresistible Forces match with Tiffany Stratton, but it was also noted that Charlotte would be in attendance. And I kind of wondered, Charlotte is one to say, make me inspired. And I was like, so Tiffany, according to what you have said on Friday Night SmackDown, Charlotte, it looked like a kid. You looked like a kid, but one that's been a fan of Charlotte and is now being noted as the next Charlotte Flair or the next Tiffany Stratton or the one and only Tiffany Stratton. I'm not sure how much pressure's on Tiffany this Friday night, which of course is tonight. I'm not sure how much pressure is on her tonight, but I would say that he or that she is not going to lose to Nia Jax without giving up an impressive fight. I think it's going to be an impressive fight tonight between Nia and I think it's going to be an impressive fight between Nia and, of course, Tiffany Stratton. But I will say that whether or not Charlotte chooses Rhea, whether or not she chooses Julia, the NXT champion right now, or she chooses Nia Jax or Tiffany Stratton, my best guess is wondering who's left to be challenged for titles. You've got the Elimination Chamber, which determines the other two competitors meeting in a main event at WrestleMania. And I kind of want to jump right into that, Scott. Assuming Rhea Ripley, also known as Mommy, doesn't have to defend her title against the Queen Charlotte Flair. I'm under the impression that if she doesn't have to attend the match between Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania 41, who's going to be the next woman on top of Mountain Tiffany to say, I want a match with the champion that Rhea sees not chosen. So I'm thinking from the women's side of the Elimination Chamber at this point and asking myself the question, Charlotte gets picked by Tiffany or Julia. I'm wondering to myself, okay, only 2 titles remain. One is going to be a part of a main event at WrestleMania. I'm thinking my best chances are probably if Rhea doesn't get picked by Charlotte and I know I can beat her. I'm thinking the chances are it's gotta be someone she hasn't faced before or has faced before, but not in a championship title contention. That's what I think's gonna happen.
All right. Well, what we're going to go ahead and do right now is we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive into some of the headlines from this past Monday on Raw. Plus, we'll dive into a little bit of the NXT headlines, including a look at NXT Vengeance Day on Saturday, what has been confirmed to go down, and of course, as always, we'll wrap it up by showcasing, and I say yes, showcasing, what else is on tap on Friday Night SmackDown. This is Sports for Beginners. It is episode 3 of 7 of season 4, not 7, season 4, episode 3. as WWE Week continues in a moment. Thomas is joining us on the show today, and we thank him for his time. So we will catch you after a quick word from our folks over at On the Ice and Behind the Benches, I should say, and Sienna T Radio, making your day brighter one song at a time. We'll be back with more in just a moment.
Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
Sienna T Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down, nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on Sienna T Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on Sienna T Radio.
Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page. Search On the Ice and Behind the Benches.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
Always great to hear from Thomas's podcast word, as well as our friends over at Sienna T Radio, making your day brighter one song at a time. It's headlines time. It's headlines time. Before we get down to business, a couple of matches to look at from the action. Of course, we saw... Oh, Thomas is going to go ahead and share the screen here. So let's go ahead and give him the... I'm going to go ahead and try to give him the chance to share his screen here. I know that Thomas wants to share his screen here. That there's an issue with that. Let's see if we can get him to share the screen. Oh no, there we go. He's sharing the screen. There we go. Yeah, you got yourself on our podcast feed, Sports for Beginners. Well, speaking of that, be sure to check out some of our latest content, including Thomas's previous games. We are still 2 games behind in the regular season on that side for Dolphins postgame. You can see those on Sports for Beginners if you prefer Sports for Beginners. You can also check them out on the Ice and Behind the Benches. And please feel free to check out Thomas's overall review on the 2024 season. All right. So with that being said, let's get back to headlines here for WWE Week. I'm not going to share my screen here, but here's what our match cards look like ahead of Vengeance Day and this past Monday on Raw. So once again, CM Punk, who has already qualified for the Elimination Chamber match, was live on Raw. And speaking of the Elimination Chamber, Logan Paul punched his ticket to the Elimination Chamber after defeating Hall of Famer Rey Mysterio. But to CM Punk's credit, which kind of set this match up, he said, "Logan, you had my number at the Royal Rumble, but the number that you drew tonight," of course this was on Monday night when they were talking, was 619, which meant Logan Paul had Rey Mysterio's number. He defeated Mysterio, so Mysterio will not qualify for the Elimination Chamber. On the women's side of things, in the Elimination Chamber, Bayley took on the inaugural intercontinental women's champion Lyra Valkyria, and that was an interesting fight. The role model Bayley taking on Lyra Valkyria, Thomas. That was an interesting fight, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that one was actually really interesting as well. That was really interesting. I actually am gonna try and get into some of the highlights. I did see some of the things that they put on YouTube about this fight. I did see some of the things that they put on YouTube through there. But my interesting point of Lyra Valkyria and Bayley's match was the fact that when Bayley qualified, I believe Bayley did qualify for the match.
She did qualify for the match against Lyra Valkyria, again, as I mentioned, inaugural women's intercontinental champion. As a result, she would take on Valkyria, but it's for the Elimination Chamber match in March, down in Toronto, I should say. At the home of the Blue Jays, no less. So when we look at it from this view, Thomas, other matches before we get more into the Elimination Chamber, we saw the return of Dakota Kai teaming up with Io Sky against Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. We got also informed before that match actually began, that Raquel Rodriguez was going to appear to get her qualifying match for the Chamber next week on Raw. And to that end, I believe, if memory serves me correctly, she will go head-to-head against Roxanne Perez. But we'll talk more about that in a little bit. AJ Styles was also set to appear on Raw, which also set up one of the next matchups next week on Raw. But let's talk about the Elimination Chamber as one of those big highlights, besides AJ versus Dominic Mysterio next week. And of course, Dakota returning to action. Of course, we know one of our big topics from Raw is Gunther versus Uso. Let me ask you on the Gunther versus Uso at Wrestlemania. Now Cody Rhodes is the only champion left without a challenger at WrestleMania. And when we look at the field, we've got Logan Paul, we've got the Scottish Warrior, Drew McIntyre, we got CM Punk. We have an opportunity to see John Cena compete in his final Elimination Chamber. Which of these men that have already qualified or taken their shot without qualifying, which of these men do you think will pull off the victory and challenge Cody for his undisputed WWE Championship at WrestleMania? Between John, Drew, CM Punk, and Logan Paul, and whoever gets added to the field in Friday Night SmackDown tonight.
You know, I've been saying it since before we came on this. I remember last Friday night, I was watching Friday Night SmackDown, and I know you were watching Friday Night SmackDown as well. I remember seeing just a little bit of Cody and Jey in a topic of conversation until they actually had a main event, which would, of course, be him, Tama Tonga, and the Samoan Werewolf in Jacob Fatu. I remember thinking to myself, was it really a great idea for the Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga team to interfere with the match that was probably going to be decided before we actually had a chance to face Gunther? And I was looking at it, and I wondered, oh, okay, we got a match. It's Cody versus, whoever. And I resembled the fact that Friday night that I thought it was Cody versus Jey Uso for WrestleMania 41, of where Gunther was headed and where the ring general, as he's called, Gunther, might find his competition. Now that competition is found, and it is indeed Jey Uso, the next competition I'm looking at is who has Cody Rhodes faced and had good matches with. John Cena's on his farewell tour, but so could a lot of other wrestlers. Because, make no mistake about it, everybody, the Elimination Chamber, the chamber itself, is known for ending careers. It is a diabolical structure. Just like the Hell in a Cell cages and steel cages. Make no mistake about it. Every Elimination Chamber you've watched or probably visited, since you probably weren't there when that happened, but you want to revisit it for the experience. Make no mistake about it. This chamber means business. And sometimes the business is breaking skulls, breaking muscles, touring ACLs, you name it. We have seen countless matches where there have been unforgettable moments. And one unforgettable moment could happen in this Elimination Chamber match for the chance to face Cody Rhodes. Do I see CM Punk winning? Maybe. Maybe he wins. But he mentioned this past Monday night that, again, he said he was going to win the Elimination Chamber. But John said he was going to win the Elimination Chamber. You go to where it says, okay, I'm going to win the Elimination Chamber. I'm going to beat the living crap out of you, John. And I'm coming for you, Cody. Okay, I get it. You guys want Cody. I understand that. The thing I don't see happening, whether people want to believe it or not, and I'll be damned shocked if it happens anyway, is if the Scottish Warrior Drew McIntyre finds a way to beat the crap out of John, Logan, CM Punk, and whoever is in the final qualifying matches. With one of them being next week on Raw against Finn Balor and CM Punk's already defeated opponent, Seth freaking Rollins. But that is a topic to talk about after Friday Night SmackDown. For this Friday night. That is a topic for that one. Do I see John facing Cody? Again, questionable. The one that I probably see facing Cody is, and I know WWE Universe, you might hate me for saying this, but I gotta go with Logan Paul. I think Logan might be on a championship reign. And he's got to get through the Elimination Chamber. We all know that. But then he's got to get through the champion, who, I'll point this out just to keep this on a need-to-know basis, had a gruesome ladder match at the Royal Rumble against Kevin Owens. Why did I say gruesome, you probably ask? Well, just look at what the object of that match was, ladies and gentlemen. You had to climb a ladder to retain the WWE Championship and the Wind Eagle Championship. You're telling me that a ladder match like that can't be gruesome? How about the chamber? Do you think that's going to be gruesome? I mean, pretty hard not to say that's obvious, right? They're going to beat the living crap out of each other. All the men trapped in a chamber. You're going to be beating the living crap out of the structure, and you're going to be beating the living crap out of all of you with the one goal in mind to win the Elimination Chamber and face Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 41 on the grandest stage of them all.
Yes, so lots to look forward to as we get closer to WrestleMania. We are on the road to WrestleMania. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've talked a little bit about our action from Raw this past Monday night. We got some action on that has been confirmed so far on Friday night. We'll get back to that in a little bit. But up next, after this word from Broadcast Map, and I believe that's what we have. Yes, I believe that's what we're looking at. Yes, after this word from Broadcast Map, we're going to go for a word from Broadcast Map, and then following that word, Thomas and I will talk NXT. This will also include for us, the whereabouts of what is in store on Vengeance Day. So I wonder, as we go to break here for a word from Broadcast, I wonder, what other kinds of craziness are we going to get from NXT? We have hit our midway mark, and we get there on WWE Week when Sports for Beginners continues after this from Broadcast Map. Stick with us.
Don't go anywhere.
there's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
Looking for conversations on the world of broadcasting, sports media, and from time to time, my favorite sports teams? Listen to Broadcast Map with me, Ali Musa. To learn more about the show and to view the upcoming schedule, like the Broadcast Map Facebook page. Search Broadcast Map. Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
Always great to hear from our good buddy Ali over at his podcast. And don't tell anyone yet, but there's a possibility we could be coming to the Sienna T radio station in the coming future. Don't tell no one we told you. I don't want to get in trouble with Sienna or Ali. Funnily enough, Ali is also a producer at that radio station. But don't tell Ali we told you, and don't tell Sienna we told you. It hasn't been made official yet. This also goes in line with the fact that we could possibly be going live a lot more often on YouTube. Mainly for our weekly programs, if we're able to get some weekly programs to you. Anyways, continuing on with WWE Week. It's time to talk about before Vengeance Day and what led into our confirmed action that we know of so far at NXT Vengeance Day this Saturday. So, before we get to the headlines, I'll quickly go over the NXT Vengeance Day lineup of match cards prior to it. Bayley took on Cora Jade in singles action. Fandango, preferably called JDC, challenged Lexis King for the NXT Heritage Cup. We had some triple threat action on Tuesday night, this past Tuesday. It was tag team though, Josh Briggs and Yoshika and Amaro. We're going to go with YI. If I pronounce the name wrong, I apologize. And Josh, I apologize to your tag team partner if I pronounced it wrong. They took on Hank Walker, Tank Leader, as well as Miles Bourne and Tavion Heights of NQCC. Zarya took on Nikita Lyons in singles action. And of course, the main event. You want some gold on the line? Well, how about this? Tony D'Angelo is the current NXT North American champion for the men's side of things. And he defended his title against Ridge Holland in a steel cage where there are no countouts, no disqualifications. Everything is perfectly legal. The only way to win was by pinfall or submission. So, Thomas, when we look at that match, let's start there. I know you probably didn't watch a lot of the NXT, but when you look at Tony D'Angelo versus Ridge Holland for the NXT North American Championship on the men's side, what are your thoughts going into the match, going into a steel cage? And this was the main event, by the way, for NXT this Tuesday night. What are your thoughts on going into a steel cage between these two men, Tony D'Angelo, the champion, Ridge Holland, the challenger? Any thoughts on the match? For me, I thought it was a pretty interesting fight, but I was at a loss for words, and I mean this. I was at a loss for words. I was at a loss for words when I found out that one of the members of the D'Angelo family turned on them. So, what are your thoughts on this match? Tony D'Angelo versus Ridge Holland.
It's one of those matches where you kind of see things boil, and when they get to a boiling point, you get a steel cage. For this title match, I believe it was Lexis King is what you're talking about. Lexis King who got
Ridge Holland and Tony D'Angelo.
Oh, that one. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so no, but yeah. The Ridge Holland match, yeah, sure. Whatever. I mean, Ridge Holland, he did what he could. He could do what he can to win this match. No doubt about it. He could do whatever he wants to try to win the match. No doubt about it. But I mean, come on, Ridge Holland, come on. You want to beat Tony D'Angelo? Not a chance. The way Tony D'Angelo fights, I think your next stop is the hospital if you're not careful. But hey, Tony D'Angelo had probably a great fight with a North American champion as him versus Ridge Holland, a guy who's trying to beat him. But again, I said this earlier when I talked about the Elimination Chamber. When you have matches where a cage is involved, you don't think it's diabolical? I mean, come on. You've seen how many cage matches they have had cage matches where a career is sometimes on the line and sometimes it's a storyline. The fact that somebody had to interfere and turn on a brotherhood boggles my mind. Because now, as a viewer, you're asking WWE the question, what was the whole point of that? Is somebody turning heel? Is somebody turning babyface? Is there something happening with this brotherhood I'm hearing about? Is there something happening behind closed doors that no one knows about? Are they trying to prepare something without anyone knowing?
Agreed. So when it comes down to it, basically there was no interference in the match, but it happened after the match when Tony successfully defended his title. But again, the way you put it, we've seen tons of cage matches, and a lot of them are not pretty. In fact, they can actually get very ugly, especially with Hell in a Cell. If you watch a lot of Hell in a Cell matches when they actually have the cell in play, oh, matches can get ugly right out of the gate. Okay, maybe not out of the gate, but they can get ugly in a hurry. How about you mentioned Lexis King, and he was challenged by JDC for the Heritage Cup. I believe if memory serves me correctly, he retained his reign as the Heritage Cup winner. So he retained. I believe that's what happened. I might have to go back and watch it again just to make sure. But what is your thoughts on JDC versus Lexis King? Because you mentioned that earlier.
I'll say what I've been saying about Lexis King and the Heritage Cup. Now, I don't understand this Heritage Cup. I understand other cups, but I don't understand why WWE would have to make their own little, would you call it, a Stanley Cup? I don't understand why they would have to do something like that. Now, give it up for JDC, okay? He challenged Lexis King. I don't think there's any other guy in that locker room, backstage, that would even come close to JDC, given he loses the match to Lexis King for the Heritage Cup. So Lexis is still the Heritage Cup champion. But if there were any wrong moves by Lexis, then yeah, I could see JDC actually pulling off a championship match and taking the Heritage Cup. Let's not forget WWE Universe. Let's not forget. Okay, let's not forget that he's the one that challenged for that title match. He said, "You all know me as Fandango. I go now by JDC." Lexis, great idea. You have a Heritage Cup. That's something I want. That's something I want to win. You meet next week, the day before Vengeance Day, and let's see who is NXT Heritage Cup champion at the end of the night.
Yes. All right. One of the headlines that I was able to note down while watching the live NXT on Tuesday was what happened after Cora Jade defeated Bayley, despite a distraction. Well, more of a nightmare, I guess, for Bayley. Or I guess an impersonation, or whatever you want to call it, from Roxanne Perez, the Prodigy. But as a result, Ava, the general manager of NXT, made the triple threat of Fatal 4-Way for NXT Vengeance Day for Julia's WWE NXT Women's Championship. So, I know I asked you this before we even thought about bringing you on the show, but I'm very curious. Do you think Roxanne made the right decision to distract Bayley and give Cora the win? Or do you think this was a move she'll regret and punishment was the decision to make it a fatal 4-way instead of a triple threat? Before you answer, let me just remind everyone, when Roxanne and Bayley were in a heated conversation in a summit before Vengeance Day, which, as I mentioned, is on Saturday, this Saturday, we knew that Roxanne had said even if she didn't win, no, she said she was going to win the NXT Women's Championship, and if she decided to vacate it, Cora Jade had a chance to probably become champion. After she also resembled the fact that she would probably go to Raw and try to win that championship from Rhea or whoever becomes the champion at that point in time. She even said she would go to SmackDown and try to win Tiffany's title that she holds right now, but might not hold by the end of Friday Night SmackDown. So when we look at that, based on your shaking head, I can see that you're thinking Roxanne made a move that she'll probably regret, given what the result was after the Cora Jade win over Bayley. Is that still the case? Do you think she did something that she's going to regret on the way to Vengeance Day?
Yeah, it's indeed a move she might forget. It's indeed something that she might forget, and she might want to forget. Like, let's say worst comes to worst, she actually wins the Elimination Chamber, but she falls short at winning the title. Now, she said nothing is unstoppable for me, because I'm going to enter the chamber if she wins and is able to go into there. I'm going to win the Elimination Chamber, and I'm going to challenge Rhea Ripley for the title. But you brought up Tiffany Stratton, and that's a good point. Now, I'm not going to try to get Tiffany a little bit of power here, but she did say, and we all heard her say, when the Women's Royal Rumble match was over, we all heard her say that it didn't matter who she saw at WrestleMania, because it is Tiffy time. Whether or not that is the case or not, I think Roxanne Perez might be biting off more than she can chew. And one of those things that I think she might be biting off more than she could chew is that the fact that she's got a fatal four-way match this Saturday at Vengeance Day NXT. And to add to that, you've also got to be prepared for that qualifying match. Bayley might not want Roxanne to be a part of the qualifying match. She may very well want to literally take her out so that Roxanne doesn't have a chance at qualifying. A certain possible mistake for people like Bayley. So, statement made, yes, by Roxanne Perez, but was it a good statement? I'm not sure if it was or not. I think she might want to rethink what she has up her sleeve there. I think she might want to rethink it. And she might want to consider the fact of, if you don't win the Elimination Chamber, well, that was your last shot to become part of WrestleMania. However, you still got somebody in NXT to beat. And who knows? Maybe next go around, you'll win the Royal Rumble. So no, to answer your question, no, it hasn't changed. I still don't know what her chances are at the Elimination Chamber qualifying match. It would not shock me if she ended up coming into the Elimination Chamber. However, what would be a shock is if she entered the Elimination Chamber from the qualifying match, but it came at a cost. That would mean she did something she wasn't supposed to do during the elimination qualifying matches, and therefore was disqualified from entering the elimination chamber. Kind of like what Kevin Owens did when he said, "I am the true champion." So kind of like that. Will that happen? I'm not 100% sure about it. And I know most of us are still wondering, where is Kevin Owens' head at? You can only go so far. And I think that he or she, in Roxanne Perez's case, might be biting off a little bit more than she can chew. So we'll see what happens at Vengeance.
We will indeed see what happens at Vengeance Day. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at our Vengeance Day lineup. And here's what we have for you. Gonna share my screen here to bring up my notes for Vengeance Day. And it looks like we got ourselves some triple threat action, as I mentioned before. We will see a triple threat, but that fatal four-way match was a triple threat between Bayley, Julia, and Roxanne Perez. Cora Jade has been now added to the fray. In triple threat action, we will see A-Town Down and Under, Austin Fury, and Grayson Waller. They will take on Oba Femi, the Ruler, to try to win his championship, the NXT championship. Also on the line in gold, Falani Henley versus Stephanie Valkyria, as Falani Henley defends her North American Championship against Stephanie Valkyria. If Javon Evans could get medically cleared, he would get a match against Ethan Page. But there was another match that most likely became official with Ethan's name in it. But we will see. I will see to make sure if that actually does get made official. But Ethan Page will take on Javon Evans. And Thomas, what do you think of this? Javon Evans is only getting this match, according to when you hear a guy like Ethan Page talk to Ava, this is not a match to, just say, let's get going, let's go ahead and let's do it. This is a match that is going to punish Javon Evans after Ava said before she made this comment, if Javon could get medically cleared, we would have this match at Vengeance Day, which is going to go down. That we know. But what are your thoughts on this? Because remember, Javon signed a waiver, meaning that whatever happened to him at Vengeance Day by Ethan Page, WWE is not responsible for. So, personally, I think this is a bad decision by Javon. But if he's willing to risk his body, I hope that he wins this match. I really do. I really hope that he wins this fight. Nothing against Ethan Page, but I'm just thinking this might be a bad decision by Javon Evans, and it could ultimately end his career before it even begins on the red and blue brands of SmackDown and Raw. But what's your take on it?
Well, keep in mind, we'll have fierce competitors. Javon Evans is a fierce competitor. He told Ava, Ethan Page, Vengeance Day, I'm there. But Ava told him, you signed this waiver. It means I can't be held responsible for anything that Ethan Page does to you. Probably should have made a little bit of a clear check at what the stipulation was going to be before saying, Ethan Page, I'm on it. I want him. So, bad move for Javon Evans on that. Whether or not he gets fully cleared, yeah, that's something to behold. That's something to behold. All right, whether or not it happens is beyond the question of the doubt, but we'll see. We will see what happens. We will see what happens.
Yes, we will. All right, last one here before we start moving on to SmackDown for the confirmed action as we head to the actual Friday night action, because as I said, this is being recorded on Thursday, February the 15th, 2025. It will drop tomorrow, which is Friday, February 14th, 2025. Ahead of SmackDown, hopefully. Last matchup that we know of for sure is going to happen. Nathan Frazier and Axiom will take on Josh Briggs and YI as Axiom and Nathan Frazier defend their NXT Championship against YI and Josh Briggs. I'll provide my take on it first. This is going to be an interesting fight, but I think Nathan and Axiom retain the title. I really do. What's your take on it, Thomas?
You know, this is one of those matches I kind of look forward to at Vengeance Day. This is one of them ones you kind of say, this is going to be a fun one. This is going to be very entertaining. I'm going to enjoy this one far more than I should. Nathan Frazier and Axiom versus Josh Briggs and YI. I mean, yeah, that's a great idea, but I think Nathan Frazier and Axiom, given their talent, I think they somehow managed to keep this team, to keep it, they keep their tag team titles. after Vengeance Day. However, it would surprise me if Josh Briggs and his partner were able to flip the script on us and tell us that there is nothing that we can do to stop them from hurting each other in Nathan Frazier and Axiom. There's nothing we could do about that. Axiom and Nathan Frazier wanted a match. They got one. So if Josh Briggs and his partner do immaculately try to beat Nathan Frazier and Axiom, and you better believe they're going to try to do so. I think I'm going with Josh on this one and saying that possibly the tag team champions will become the new tag team championship leaders in tag team action for you.
All right. Well, this show is winding down. We have crossed that midway mark of the show. So now we are on to Friday night. What has been confirmed? What has been confirmed for Friday Night SmackDown? What has been confirmed? What do we have to look forward to next week on Raw and NXT? Never mind NXT next week. We'll look at Raw for the duration of this one. But what do we have to look forward to on Raw next week? We mentioned a few of the matches early on. So the question is, with Friday Night SmackDown tonight, what else is on tap on the Red brand next week as we get ready for Vengeance Day on the NXT brand this Saturday? We'll find out those answers when we wrap up WWE week on the other side. Stick with us.
Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
Looking for conversations on books and more, as well as tutorials on using your favorite devices and applications? You've come to the right place. Join us weekly on Spicy Techie, where Ali and Sienna provide insightful conversations, as well as useful tips and tricks to help you along on your technological journey. To learn more, tune into the show and like the Spicy Techie Facebook page. Search for Spicy Techie.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
Okay, back on Sports for Beginners, back for another wraparound of WWE week on Sports for Beginners. Glad you could join us, whether you're tuning in on Sienna T Radio rather on our podcast feed, Sports for Beginners, the podcast. And of course, over on YouTube. This will all be in an audio version on the YouTube side when we hit it on the podcast end as well. But the videos we've recorded they just might be added to the YouTube channel as well. Thomas, it's time to take a look at Friday Night SmackDown for tonight, February 14th, 2025. We know that Nia is going against Tiffany. We know that Naomi will take on Chelsea Green. And we got triple threat action in the men's area this week on SmackDown. Strowman versus Priest versus Fatu. Let's start with Elimination Chamber qualifying match. Triple threat. Strowman versus Jacob versus Damian. Who do you see winning this match and getting added to the field for Elimination Chamber out of these three men?
I mean, who don't you see? The real question is, who don't you see winning this match? Who don't you see winning this match? And I can say for certain, as much as I want to root against Braun Strowman, it's not Braun Strowman. If anything, it's either Jacob Fatu not competing in this one, or Damian Priest falling short of this match. But again, I don't see Braun Strowman losing this match. I don't see it. I don't. I literally don't. You guys can say whatever you want about Braun Strowman, but make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it, everybody. Make no mistake about it. He is a monster among all monsters, almost as big as Mark Henry, who was at one point known as the world's strongest man, and that has a lot to it. That has a lot to it. A lot to it that is so immeasurably good, especially to a guy who can be almost too confident at sometimes. Now, Braun Strowman may not be confident as many times as not, as I've mentioned, but sometimes things could get a little off track with this guy. And I think, despite what I say about him, he will come out and pull out the win, even if he has to do it in front of a perfect reaction.
All right. On the women's side, we have some Elimination Chamber matches as well. We have Naomi taking on Chelsea Green. But let's talk about, out of the confirmed matchups, let's talk about Tiffany versus Nia. Now, remember, Charlotte has not made her decision yet. She could choose to face Mommy, aka Rhea Ripley. She could choose Julia, who currently is champion of the NXT. And she could also choose Tiffany. But Tiffany has to get by on Friday Night SmackDown. She has to get by the one and only irresistible force of Nia Jax. Now, Nia has claimed, and I don't believe this is a false claim. I really don't. I don't believe this is a false claim at all. I don't believe it. But Nia has claimed that Tiffany stole that championship from her So when we look at Thomas, who is possibly going to win that fight, who do you got? Nia or Tiffany? Is Tiffany... Let me rephrase my question. Is Tiffany going to retain, or is Nia going to take the title away from her?
I'm a little split down the middle on this one. Don't get me wrong, WWE Universe. I think that the Irresistible Force, Nia Jax, has a chance at winning it. Don't get me wrong. I think she has a chance at beating Tiffany. She has done it once before, and I think she can do it again. Well, again, Tiffany has asked us every time she's on, night after night that she comes into the ring as champion, what time is it? Well, it's Tiffy time, or Tiffy time is up. But again, whether or not Charlotte chooses Tiffy or the Irresistible Force, I think Nia wins this match hands down, but I'm going to wait to see what a lot of other people say. I think Tiffy loses her reign and maybe, just maybe, some of her gold. We'll see what happens, but it is what it is.
We will see indeed what happens. All right. As we mentioned in the Elimination Chamber, we talked about the men's triple threat. Now, how about Naomi versus Chelsea Green? Personally, I would love it if Naomi knocks off Chelsea, but if Piper Niven pipes in, which I have a feeling might happen, but we don't know, I have a feeling that Chelsea is going to main event Elimination Chamber and knock off Naomi. Who do you have? Regardless if Piper pipes in and causes a distraction during the match.
I mean, I'm in the dark here. I really think that the Elimination Chamber qualifying match for the women is a happenstance here. I think it's kind of happenstance. I would love to see if Chelsea Green can actually make note of herself and actually prove she deserves to be the United States champion. But I'd also love to see someone like Io Sky dash Chelsea Green's hopes and dreams against this game. Excuse me. Yes, it's Naomi, I believe, is the competitor. I would love to see Naomi dash Chelsea Green's hopes and dreams of the Wrestlemania. Nothing against Chelsea Green. I think she's doing a great job being the United States Championship holder for the women. I think she's doing a great job. Great job. I think she's doing a great job. But again, you're talking about a match with two of the very best in the business. And it's all for the Elimination Chamber. This is going to come down to who has the last punch to give. And I think that last punch to give will come in the hands of Naomi. I think Naomi's going to take care of business against Chelsea Green. No disrespect to Chelsea. I love what she's doing for the company. I love it. I really do.
Yes, no disrespect to Chelsea. We shall see what happens. That's the matchups we know so far for Friday Night SmackDown. What about next week on Raw? I'll give this to you, Thomas, here, and this is next week on Raw. So, what do we got? Let us know what's been official and confirmed. You are muted, Thomas.
All right. All right, everybody. All right. You want to know what's next for Monday? Well, you're going to love this. Dirty Dominic Mysterio faces the phenomenal one, AJ Styles. We talked about that one already. You got an elimination qualifying match against the visionary, the revolutionary Seth freaking Rollins. And you got Finn Balor as his opponent. You've also got the qualifying matches between Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez. Raquel Rodriguez. Sheesh, that's going to be a great match. I wonder if it will be a fun one, too. Let's see if we've got news of anything else that's going on Monday night next week. Let's see if we got more news from that, which will be this Monday night, the 17th of 2025. I'm sure we've got a lot of matches coming up on this table. One in particular I'm interested in is Seth freaking Rollins versus Finn Balor. I'm excited for that one because I would love to see one of these men take on CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, John Cena, Logan Paul. I really could care less if Logan Paul gets defeated by Finn Balor. I could care less. I could care less for that. Oh, speaking of which, Finn Balor may be taking on Seth Rollins, but welcome to the Penta era. Penta is back, and he takes on Pete Dunne in what should be great action. And that's pretty much all the highlights you can get out of this Raw coming up at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific on Monday Night Raw's next Monday night, which will be the 17th. So there's a lot of details for you on the match. There's a lot of details. But the match I am very interested in is Seth freaking Rollins duking it out with said match opponent of Finn Balor. That's going to be a good one. I can't wait to see that one.
Nor can I. I can't wait to see that either. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this episode of Sports for Beginners. That is going to do it for this episode this week of Sports for Beginners, the podcast. Before we go, however, I would like to open the floor to Thomas for a quick update on what's coming up on the ice and behind the benches. I know there's a lot of content that has been recorded, and some of it is in recording phase and hasn't been put out yet. Even as we are now in the Four Nations tournament. And of course, at the time of our recording, USA is going to go head-to-head with Finland tonight. And last night, of course I'm talking at the top of our recording, Mitch Marner won that game for Canada in a thriller. As Canada knocks off Sweden 4-3 in overtime. So Thomas, let us know what's coming up on the ice and behind the benches.
All right, everybody. So on the ice and behind the benches has been hitting a bit of some rough patches lately with our bonus content. We have some stuff to get to you. Some Dolphin post game will come your way. You will not be able to see the season end review Dolphin show on the ice and behind the benches. So if you have missed the Dolphins season end review show on Sports for Beginners, I hope you guys check it out soon, because maybe next time you might not get another shot at it on Sports for Beginners. It might be on the ice and behind the benches. But I don't want to spoil next season for the Dolphins, whether or not it's going to be on the ice and behind the benches, a season in review, or in Sports for Beginners. Since we already have one for you on Sports for Beginners, so make sure you tune into it on Sports for Beginners. We talked about the season. I gave you my personal thoughts on the season. As far as the hockey content goes, women's action will be returning once we get through what was supposed to lead up to Boxing Day after the Christmas break, but we missed out on that. We'll be joining the action when we approach March. We'll be getting back to it in March, so there'll be some women's hockey action for you there. And I've also got some baseball news and analysis I'd like to bring out when our season content returns. Perhaps we'll recap the entire Four Nations tournament, and maybe our friend and fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs, like myself, Brent Gunning, will join us to talk about the Four Nations in the fullest extent. We are thinking about getting sponsors on the show, so if you want to join the show and talk about some potential sponsorships, please send emails to our official email address on the ice and behind the benches, pod82@gmail.com, with the subject sponsorships, and we will connect with you. If you've got questions, please send them to sportsforbeginnerspod8231@gmail.com with the subject behind benches questions, or the other one we use is ask behind benches. And as far as Maple Leaf post recap goes on the ice and behind the benches, we will be initiating transfer following the conclusion of Penguins and Maple Leafs, as some of the content you get on the ice and behind the benches will be transitioning into Sports for Beginners. But I don't want to tease what teams will be transitioning there quite yet. So stick tuned for another edition of that, if I give you some updates on that. We have an upcoming podcast on my season number 2, which we're going to try to get that finished for you. And then I've got some things I want to do on season 3, but let's wrap up season 2. And next on season 2, we were going to initially talk about the PWHL's new original 6-team names to kick things off. But given it's baseball season, I'll tease a little bit of that show. We'll have some fun conversations about how the Blue Jays team will work through spring training, give you season predictions on how the Blue Jays will do this season, and Blue Jays Game Recap returns at the end of the homestand. Be sure to get Blue Jays game recap homestand edition, featuring games from the Baltimore Orioles. I believe is where we kick things off for the Blue Jays this season at home. And their other team of conversation that will be in the homestand. We'll have it for you right here on the Ice and Behind the Benches. Don't miss out. If there are any promotions that we bring on the show, we are doing it out of respect of entertainment purposes only. We will have a great match for you to tune into. Reminder, we will have the Nationals, the Orioles, all Blue Jay game recap for you following Thursday, April the 3rd, when we get ready for the Mets and the Red Sox on Friday. Who knows? Maybe some people that are covering the show on Sportsnet will be joining us to talk about them. Probably not on the game recap, but as season predictions during the season show. That's all I can provide for you right now. I want to close out the show with saying thank you to Scott for allowing us to come on and help out with this WWE weekend review. And if you haven't already, be patient with us. The Royal Rumble show of my own is coming out, and I have some thoughts on the gruesome match I talked about between Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes, also known as the American Nightmare. We'll bring that out to you as soon as we can. If you're looking for working environment shows, we have one show that came out on the Ice and Behind the Benches. So if you have not checked it out, please go and check it out. It's with one of our close friends and actually known throughout the school that was part of a guidance department in St. Marcelina Secondary School, as he now becomes an author with a book called My Father's Secret. Will that be on the podcast I'm leaving you in the dark with? Maybe. You never know what will happen on the other podcast. Will there be another episode of that particular podcast I'm teasing but not giving out? Who knows? And with that, thank you very much, Thomas. That's going to be a lot of great content. Speaking of great content, you've heard it here first. Here on this episode of Season 4 of Sports for Beginners, Blue Jays game recap will be back this summer, right after the first homestand of the new season. Will it be live? Will it be just audio and not live here on Riverside or in video format? That all remains to be seen, but Thomas and I will be on together to discuss it all. It might be a totally different format than previous recaps, but you never know. We'll provide you our thoughts on the first series of games against the Orioles, and then we'll provide you with our Nationals thoughts as well. My name is Scott McGregor. That is going to do it for another episode of Sports for Beginners, not weekly, Sports for Beginners. Until next time, everyone, keep calm, stay safe out there, and we'll see you on the next episode of Sports for Beginners. If you like what you've heard on YouTube or on Spotify, please be sure to subscribe, or rather follow the podcast on YouTube under the YouTube channel Weekly in Sports with Scott. You can also
join the conversation on Discord? Want to join our Penguin postgame conversation? Go to Penguin's postgame show interactions. That's Penguin's postgame show interactions to join our conversation on the Discord server. And of course, subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And with that, he's Thomas McGregor. I'm Scott McGregor. As I mentioned before, stay calm out, stay safe out there, drive carefully, love one another. We'll see you next time on Sports for Beginners. Have a great week, everybody. And for those tuning into the WWE action on Saturday, enjoy Friday Night SmackDown on Friday, and then be sure you get there to see what goes down at Vengeance Day. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to Sports for Beginners. If you would like to learn more about the show, you can visit the podcast Facebook page or visit the official website. You can also send us an email at sportsforbeginners podcast8231@gmail.com. As we always remind you, it is not goodbye, it is until next time.